Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey. And oftentimes, when we're seeking help, especially for our mental health, maybe it's therapy, maybe it's other medical treatments, it can feel very isolating. It can feel cold. It can feel very transactional. But today, we're going to talk about a guest today who saw that and said, we need to make community, we need to make harmony, we need to have individualized treatment where every patient feels seen and heard. Ms. Rhonda Hodge, so good to have you here. And could you please introduce yourself for us?
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, my name's Rhonda Hodge. I have my doctorate as an NP. I'm board certified in psychiatric, as well as board certified as in family medicine, which is essentially as an NP is like primary care. But I started my career as a therapist, so I'm a licensed therapist as well.
Yeah, so I mentioned harmony not just as something we want in our lives, but also as what you run. And I want to know what makes it so different, so individualized, and so much more of a community than other services.
So I started Harmony really honestly based on wanting to do things a little bit differently as far as mental health is concerned. Because I started my career as a therapist and was able to do the therapy piece for I think 9 or 10 years prior to going into medicine, I was able to see how disjoined essentially they were and how it was therapy or medicine and they really weren't combined. So that was my initial start for Harmony, as well as looking at all of the other reasons why people are suffering from mental illness. And it is, like you said in the beginning, it's that lack of community, that lack of love, feeling that like you're a number when you walk in somewhere. And over the past 10 years, Harmony opened 10 years ago, we have become a super strong family and have added a lot of resources to be able to really wrap around our patients. So I love that we're doing it different.
Right. And so when it started, it was just you saying, hey, did you feel like as a practicing therapist that you just couldn't reach your patients in the way you wanted to?
One example I like to give, and when my providers, when I've hired my providers, I do talk to them about my why, and it's really evolved since then. But one of my initial whys is because I was seeing a kiddo as their therapist and having to hold up their little head because they were really over medicated. Um, and then
Wow.
not being able to get in touch with their provider who was treating them with medication. And I'll never forget her face, and it hit me pretty hard. I also wanted to open up a place where their providers were important too. And they were able to have their family life and be able to uh, make themselves a priority as well, because then they're better helping their patients. And I, I think we've done that.
So are the people who work with you, are they both a therapist and a provider, or you just have therapists and providers working closely together rather than in your case, as you mentioned, not being able to get in contact with one another?
So we do, I mean, a lot of practices do have NPs or psychiatrists and counselors in the same office. We have five five therapists and 14 nurse practitioners at this point. But we also have um, academic coaches, executive functioning, adult ADHD coaching, college counseling, TMS, which is an alternative treatment for depression. We run labs. We really try to wrap around the patient. So lots of practices will have both, but our NPs are seeing patients for longer. So they are PMH NPs, so they're psychiatric nurse practitioners who are also doing some of the therapy piece to help support what the therapists are doing. And just because of that family community that we have, we're always in contact. So it's just the relationships are different than offices who do have the same. I'm hoping that a lot more offices are starting to do it this way.
Yeah, for sure. And could you highlight some of the ways that it's more like a family and a community?
kind of funny. I tell my patients I love them. I mean, I do. It's weird, but I do, and it sounds weird when I say it, but our patients know that they are a part of our family. We do a lot of like I'll do videos and output and kind of just talking to them as people. I think one of the things that's really hard is when you go to get help for mental health, it's not something like you're not going because you have diabetes and the labs show that you have this, right? It's a it's even more vulnerable than that. I want
Right.
the patients that walk into our door to feel like they're an equal to us, that there's no power dynamic, that we see them for
Hmm.
everything they are, not just what they're walking through the door for. And I do that by allowing our providers to be a little bit more vulnerable with their patients too.
Right, seeing them as people, not as just a diagnosis or
Mhm.
a symptom to treat. And one of the things we talk a lot about on the show is, the word stigma and societal views on mental health help and care, especially for first responders and military members, for men, and then for women of different age brackets and all different cultures in society. But part of that stigma is relying on the services themselves, the therapists and a place being welcoming, being non-judgmental. Because if the place itself is judgmental, adding to that layer of the societal stigma, then you're definitely not going to want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you first responders, we actually have a group that we've run periodically for first responders and providers who, especially those that were possibly like in the ICU during COVID. But I do think that is one thing that COVID did help with is that the stigma is being reduced.
Mm,
Uh, you're going to have a lot more people who are going to get help. So therefore, more people who are going to therapy. I mean, it used to be that in the waiting room, you could almost feel it, like a little uncomfortable if they saw somebody they knew. Now they'll bop next to them, sit with them, and talk. So it is definitely being reduced. And one of the few things that COVID did that I do think helped mental health.
yeah. And then I just know from, doing some research on you, another thing that makes you unique compared to a lot of places is what you call NeuroStar. And I'd
Mhm.
love for you to go into that because it was something that I personally had not heard of before. And I think it is very interesting, especially as an alternative for those who just feel like medicine treatment has not worked. And I think it's always important to put out other options because we live in a world where between mainstream media and social media and just the way economics work. A lot of people are just pharmaceutical, focused, and a lot of people think I just need medicine, this and that. But there are a lot of other types of treatments out there, like NeuroStar. So I'd love for you to share about that.
Absolutely. I was nervous after COVID, where we did have therapy. We brought the academic and executive functioning and ADHD coaching in around the same time that we brought in TMS, which is NeuroStar, is the company that we work with. So after COVID, with therapy and medications and everything that we were doing, we just weren't seeing people get better in the same way, and it was definitely a mental health pandemic, if you will. The hospitals were full in the emergency rooms. Kids were boarding, adults were boarding. The numbers were well over, like Boston Children's had over hundreds boarding at one point, and it was scary. So I knew I needed to do something a little bit different. I looked into lots of alternative therapies, and I was sending people to Beth Israel Hospital, which is one of the best hospitals in Boston. And not everybody knows what Beth Israel is, but it's just not sustainable. TMS, you have to go 5 days a week, and it's about 18, 19 minutes of treatment going back and forth to Boston. For those that know, Boston traffic isn't easy.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not easy. So, I took a chance and I didn't fully understand how it was working. I was skeptical, but that machine, I'm even just talking about it, that machine has brought me to tears so many times. It gives me the chills. I want to hand it out like candy. And it's great. I mean, it is being a lot of research. There's a lot of research being done for veterans too with PTSD. So I brought it in 2 years ago right about now, and we've treated over 200 patients, and it's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's amazing.
Yeah, so can you tell us what it is and how it works?
Sure. So if you do look on my site or you look up NeuroStar, it looks like a dentist chair. I always have the patients come in and look at it and they kind of giggle at first, but we do a mapping to look at what part of the brain we need for the treatment zone. And it's essentially a magnet. It's transcranial magnetic stimulation, and it's stimulating the brain. I'll show patients. There's a great image that they have of what a depressed brain looks like on a functional MRI versus a undepressed brain. And the idea of TMS is to activate the brain to be able to use the neurotransmitters in the way that we're supposed to. And it works. I have one patient who is comfortable with me sharing that I've been seeing since I was a therapist. So we were both around late teens, early 20s. And so I've known her all of this time. And it's the first time in her life that she's felt joy. And that alone, because I do have that almost like that study in my brain, I've known this person for so long, and to be able to see her have joy in her life and to feel like she's actually living, hands down, even if it was just her that got better, it was worth it.
Right, right. I think it's definitely an interesting practice
Mhm.
and something, like I said, I had not heard of before. And so I think it's definitely something interesting. I think that as, like you said, it's still one of those things where people are still researching it and pulling up all the benefits and all the different ways it can be used. And I think it's something we're going to see more and more as time moves forward. And now I'd like to have you share with us some advice for how to, not us as providers or therapists, but as family members, loved ones, and friends, interact with people who are seeking treatment and feel like they're isolated or not part of a community. What can we do to reach them?
I would say probably hurdle help. So the idea of hurdle help is to almost like body double with them. What I mean by that is those first phone calls can be extremely scary. I mean, somebody with anxiety, it's hard to order a pizza, to pick up the phone and just
Yeah,
make a phone call. Not that we have to do that anymore, right? We do it on apps, but just the idea of making any sort
right.
of phone call. So helping them to do that, and then helping them through the different steps. So if you think about, for example, like the symptoms of ADHD, which we're actually seeing quite a bit more because of the depression, trauma, and anxiety, those executive functioning skills can, each step of that feels like a mountain. So if we do the steps with them just to get them in the door and get them wrapped around by mental health professionals, do it. You don't necessarily have to force them and do it for them. You want to do it with them because it needs to be within their control. And that's a part of what anxiety and depression take away from you. It's the control over your life. So, hurdle help, like I said, or body doubling helps you do it with them.
Right. So helping guide them and get them connected with the people that they need to see, helping them get connected. Because sometimes, like you said, it can be very difficult for them to do, whether it's because of their conditions or just because of, like we said, the mindset around that kind of stuff. And then also just being vulnerable and sharing with them. Maybe you've done that same journey already or have had a similar experience, so also creating that relatability and vulnerability. And then one thing I wanted to clarify for everyone listening was, are you online as well, or are you in person only?
No, we do remote, hybrid, and then in person. Yeah.
Right. And that that's good. I know a lot of places have gone virtual. Do you find it hinders your ability to connect as a community at all, or do you feel like it has brought more people into your community and strengthened it?
I think it's probably done both. We do, I mean, I tried COVID, we just learned how to do it, right? That's why I do a lot of videos and outreach to patients where I'll send videos. Sometimes they're corny. They're not done. Sometimes you're seeing my animals behind me, but just to connect as a person, because if we are doing virtual, I don't want them to feel as if they're only on their phone seeing that one provider. I want them to know that they are a part of Harmony and they're a part of the family. We do lots of outreach things in the community. Like last year, I brought the practice, whoever wanted to go, to see Inside Out 2. And we're going to be doing that for one of their new movies and another way to help reduce the stigma. But for patients that are further away, that don't have the opportunity, um, that's where the outreach is. We do a lot of groups, we do support groups. So it's a way to bring people together in a more social way. Um, so yeah.
I think it's so important for providers and people working virtually to really focus on making a connection because, like, I'll just speak from my personal experience with it, and I know a lot of veterans would agree. But when I did the VA telehealth, the virtual appointments compared to the in-person, it was a whole different world. You know, like the in-person, you're talking, you're really going through everything, and you're really connecting. The telehealth, I felt like the way, maybe it was just the providers I had, very checkbox showed up, question, 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 yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Very, very robotic, very not connecting compared to the in-person appointments. And also with the telehealth, they were on like such a time crunch, whereas in person, it was like, hey, you were scheduled to have up to an hour and a half to discuss everything. We're going to take that. Remember telehealth, I was like, hey, so we're scheduled for an hour and a half. And they're like, no, we're getting this done. And it's like, you want to talk to them about some more things. And they're kind of just like, all right, well, I'm just they're like typing and you know I felt like it was very robotic and again that's just my personal experience that I went through but I know a lot of veterans who have shared similar experiences with me so I think it's important especially when you're providing therapeutic services to have that connection online and to make sure that you're going out of your way to make sure that is known especially to people who already feel like we said isolated or like they're just a patient and now adding that virtual layer and that coldness to it can really have a negative impact on them.
Yeah, I'm sorry that that was your experience. It is something that I have heard as well. I mean, as we're social creatures, and there is that energy that you get between people of being able to feel like they're present. But there are also a lot of people who are, let's get all of these patients seen and let's get this done. I'm hoping that that is shifting and that is changing. But again, I am sorry that that's your experience. That was your experience. I do feel like for our remote providers, I also try to I only hire people that I've seen how they've worked essentially. And
Right.
there's a warmth that really needs to be present if you're going to be a remote provider. You need to be really present with your patients and it's takes a really unique individual to be a really solid remote provider for sure.
Yeah, especially, you know, if you're at your an office, you know, and you can't leave until 5 o'clock or whatever time, then you're there and you know you're gonna do the work. But if you're working from home and it's like, hey, as soon as I'm done with this appointment, as soon as it's done, now I have this buffer time to just hang around my house or watch TV or do this and that. There's a lot more temptation to get work done faster than maybe the time you should be putting into it. So I understand it. And then also some people are just you know, I've met plenty of people who like just aren't comfortable or good at doing the whole virtual thing. Like you said, it's not natural. We're supposed to be in person and social, but I think it is a very efficient way of reaching people that normally couldn't be reached. And we're gonna have your website in the description below for everyone to check out. You know, you've got the information of your history, some of your services, as well as resources and contact. And then what is the future looking like as you continue to expand Harmony?
So I did just open up a second location where I noticed that we did have people coming from Maine and from Seacoast, Massachusetts. So we have an office in the Seacoast. We are starting some summer camp programs. We did a smaller one last year. We're doing one this year. Kiddos that are neurodiverse, oftentimes it's a little bit more difficult for parents to drop them off and have a summer camp therapeutic experience without it
Mm,
being $9 trillion, or for them to drop them off and feel comfortable. So we
right.
are doing that. We have some neurodiverse groups called like adulting because between 18 and 24, that can be super tough. We have what other? We have a girls empowerment group we're starting this summer. So one of the things that we're trying to do is, as much as we're doing the individual, we really want to start bringing people together. What we noticed post-COVID is that people had a really hard time being together after. And then if we think
Yeah.
about as kids are getting older, we're seeing a little bit more of what that isolation did developmentally. So we do have a large focus on really bringing people together, whether it's virtually or in person, getting people outside. We do hiking groups, therapeutic hiking groups. We do sometimes if I have a kiddo that's really needs to be moving, we will jog while we're talking. So just lots of unique things, but we do have an academic and program that is developing now.
Yeah, so a lot of great stuff for the future. I think, like you said, it's important to have not just that individualized treatment where they're seen and heard by their provider, but also by others, especially people who have gone through similar experiences and like them furthering that sense of community and not feeling alone. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you feel like you haven't gotten that individualized treatment, if you don't feel seen or heard, and you want to be part of a community that cares about you, check out Harmony in the description below and especially share this resource to other people if you feel like they are having a hard time. You know, we talked earlier about helping guide people to resources like that. So please take that initiative and share this with someone who maybe is struggling to find that community where they feel seen and heard. But Ms. Rhonda, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your time so that you could spread more of that community and continue to grow.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.